this is Call My Bluff, where the only thing that gets a bigger laugh than a disease of sheep is Frank Muir.
Good evening. My first guest is a delightful and very beautiful actress who used to enchant us as Gussie in Compact, and more recently was the voluptueuse in Moody and Peg, Frances Bennett. My second guest is new to the programme, which is nice. He's a novelist, and he also is a presenter of arts programmes, Second House, and read all about it, Melvyn Bragg.
Or even Melvyn, I think, yes. And that old Turkish customs official, Patrick Campbell.
And my first guest died of influenza round about the 14th of December, upstairs when she was called Mrs. Bellamy. But, of course, she's a lovely actress, Wynn Owen. And my other guest is a television critic, if you... I better say with astonishment, who's written some nice words about this show and now appears fearlessly on it himself. And the Daily Telegraph is a Richard Last.
Just write a few nice words about us, lads, and you know how to get on the show. So there you are. You have the first word, trolloper, but I dare say they'll pronounce it all every which way. Frank Muir and his team will define trolloper 3 different ways. 2 definitions are false, one's true. That's the one that Patrick and company are going to try and pick out. So what about this word, Frank?
Well, trolloper, pronounced trolloper, is kind of jokey word for a chap who's fond of not sort of disrespectful girlfriends, things like that, but who was terribly fond of the novels of Anthony Trollope. It's a name given to an aficionado, or one who was absolutely riveted by them. 1974 was a very good year for television trollopers.
Yes. Now it's Melvyn Bragg's turn.
Well, a trolloper is the name of an American pony, purebred, which has been taught to pace, that is, to walk with its near leg and its off legs working together, not alternately. And trolloper is also an Americanism, it's an American pony, for a trotting race in which only purebred trollopers can take part.
OK. Now, Francis.
Well, a trolloper is a chap who has a special method of catching shrimps in the wash. Now, not that sort of wash. The wash where King John lost his jewels. He catches shrimps, the trolloper does, by trawling a net in the shallow water, but he doesn't have a boat trawling the net because it would run aground, wouldn't it, if it was shallow water? He has a horse and cart, and that's a trolloper.
Oh, there you have it. You've got 3 definitions there. It's a pony which trots in a peculiar way. It's a devotee of the author Trollope, and it's one who catches shrimp or shrimps. Patrick.
It is poor American pony trotting along with all 4 legs apparently tied together and pulling a trap or American trolloping cart at the same time. Improbable? And as for... Oh, Lord. You said, Frank, what I did... Well, it disappeared. And
Do you want an action replay?
no, just a brief clue.
It was a chap who was very fond of Trollope.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that. So yes, fairly making it of any kind.
I take your point.
We believe it to be a kind of method of fishing for shrimps in the wash.
Frances Bennett, true or bluff, my dear? Well done. So there you are, trolloper. It means a certain kind of shrimper, one who catches shrimps. And there we have another word, and it's pronounced, as far as I know, gyro, Patrick?
It's very difficult to pronounce it because it's a Thailand word. It used to be called Siam, but it's a kind of combination of the R and the L. How? Rather difficult. How? In fact, it's a barking bird. It looks a little bit like a magpie, and it lives in northern Thailand, round about the medieval city of Chiang Mai. Now you might think, you might think a barking bird would go woof woof, but no. It goes yap 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 yap.
Not too often, one hopes. Richard last, I think it's your go.
Gero, or Gero, is a word from down under, actually from New Zealand, so the accent is all wrong anyway. And it means, it's a slang word, it means a ticking off, a dressing down, a rocket. And in New Zealand domestic circles, you may frequently hear a husband giving his wife a Gero if he thinks she's done something wrong, or even more frequently, a wife doing the same thing for her husband.
Yes. And now, Meg Wynn Owen.
It's really pronounced Haru because it's Japanese. And in fact, it's a Japanese game a little like Mahjong, but more complicated. And it's played with small blocks depicting fish and animals and plants and birds. And these, depending on the fall of the dice, are then manoeuvred into kind of certain positions. And it's a very skillful game, and it needs infinite patience.
Yeah.
Like this one.
Yes. Well, it's the way you get... It's a name for ticking off in New Zealand. It's a Japanese game, more complex than Mahjong or Mahjong. And it's a barking bird. I refuse all temptation to make any jokes. Frank.
Come on, what was the joke you were going to...
I'll tell you afterwards.
I don't think it's a New Zealand rocket, because I think New Zealanders hit each other with sheep when they're having a domestic quarrel. It's indigenous, you know. Whether it's barking bird...
Yeah, don't do it, Frank, please.
No, I won't... you get penalised on this game for jokes, you know. Being sort of knocked out of us joking. I don't think it's a barking bird. I think it's a very good bluff. I think it's it's a barking bird.
Now, it was the barking bird. That was Patrick who so
I changed my mind.
graphically gave us that description. True or bluff?
Bird. Look at it all over its
whoop, whoop,
No, it wasn't anything like that. We now need to know the true definition of the word. Here it comes. 1, 2, 3, go. Sure it's there somewhere. Oh. Yes. Well, Richard last gave the true definition there. It's a ticking off in New Zealand.
Non-you behaviour.
And here we have another word, jolly it is, and it's Melvyn, your go.
Well, jolly is the name by which a cormorant is known in the Hebrides, particularly around the island of St Kilda. The name's got nothing at all to do with jolliness, but it comes from an old Gaelic word, yolly, which means the hungry one, and the fish-eating cormorant is always hungry, as you know, and it comes from that, and it's called the jolly.
Yes. Giving nothing away, Francis?
I don't know whether you call it jolly or jolie, but he called it jolly, so I call it jolly. It's a mechanically driven potter's wheel that's used in the mass production of cups and jugs and, well, it's sort of hollowware. You know, you make hollowware on a jolly. It's a revolving disc. It's rather like the sort of disc you have on a turntable of record player, on which bits of hollowware are thrown. And they're shaped. I mean, not flung and shaped. Thrown is a professional word. And shaped.
Yes, it is. Yes. Good enough now, Frank?
In Queen Victoria's day, you could buy opium over the counter at a chemist's. And little lumps of this sticky stuff were bought as an analgesic by the poorer classes against rheumatic pains and toothache and things like that. And this lump of this cheap stuff they used to call jolly. Or they didn't.
Frank Muir is the opium of the people. No, it's cheap opium. It's cheap opium. I do apologise, Frank. Unworthy. Potter's Wheel, cormorant. Richard.
I thought television was the opium of the people.
Watch it, lad.
Yes,
You'll never come back.
I would be very inclined to the potter's wheel, because it's just the sort of word they use for pottering and things of that nature. But Frances has already had, so it didn't see it can really be her. Cormorant, jolly. He doesn't seem to go somehow. So, with deep misgiving, I think it's Frank's definition about the cheap anise. I can't even say it, or whatever it was he said.
The analgesic of which he spoke, cheap opium and all that. True or bluff, Frank?
It's a bluff. It's
Got it there somewhere.
Perhaps journalism is the opium of the people.
Nothing to do with that at all. Who gave the true definition? Now we learn it. Francis was right.
Well done,
When she
lad.
said it was a potter's wheel. Gangart is the next word, and Richard last to define it.
Gangart, it sort of sounds vaguely sinister. In fact, it is nothing more than a kind of false hoof on the leg, or I suppose even the arm, of a deer. A sort of little lump, about 6 inches from the real hoof. And that's about all there is to say. It's not a very interesting word, I'm afraid.
Well, that's at least.
It's fascinating.
Didn't get that kind of honesty often. Maybe.
No, a gangart is a very aggressive word. A gangart is a thrust or a lunge, made with a rapier, a pike, or anything you can lunge with. I mean, imagine a furled umbrella in the hands of a very determined lady. I think that could administer a gangart of painful intensity. Don't you?
Right. Patrick, what do you say?
Now, if you like fun and laughter and throwing mud and stones at one another, Gangart is the stuff for you. There's a laugh in every lump of Gangart. You've got your mine here, you see, and the stuff comes up, and there are billions of tons of Gangart, and in the middle of it, one little bit is zinc or copper, whatever it is, and when the miners see all these mountains of Gangart, they can't restrain their laughter. They say, look, there's more Gangart coming up.
Most enthusiastic definition. It's the gubbins in a sort of mineral deposit. It's the false hoof of a stag, or indeed a false elbow, and it's a thrust from a pike or anything like that. Melvyn.
Well, Richard Last's not very interesting deer lump. I don't think so. Probably wrong, but I don't think so. A gangart, a thrust, a lunge from a sword. I think they would have chosen a more elegant word. I hope they would. Because I think it's Captain Campbell's laughing muck, or dross, or whatever you want to call it.
Let's just see if he laughs now as he reveals whether it was true or bluff. He's trying to laugh.
There's a smile in every lump.
Yes, was indeed a laugh in that one because it was true. It is sort of dross or slag or that sort of thing with mineral deposits. No. And here you have two words the prize of one. Sally Nixon, Francis Bennett, or Francis Bennett, Sally Nixon, whatever you think.
Well, a Sally Nixon is a large urn, and it was usually made from cast iron with a tin lining. And it was used at Victorian bun fights and get-togethers and things because they put the tea in it and dispensed the tea from it. It was called a Sally Nixon rather unkindly by some, I suppose, of the young blades of the times after a rather large music hall lady of that name. The Sally Nixon.
Sally Nixon?
Well, the Sally Nixon is the urn that was named after the large Victorian lady because it reminded them of
Have you grasped that?
Into answering his supplementary question.
Yes, it's dangerous ground. Frank.
Yes. A Sally Nixon is a smoked freshwater mussel enjoyed and found in Fifeshire. Now, Fifeshire is part of Scotland, a country to the north of England, noted during the 19th century for the export of porridge oats, and marine engineers. The craft of making plaids and tartans was popularised in the late 19th century by a Polish tailor, oddly enough, who lived in Edinburgh. Anyway, in Scotland you get these freshwater mussels.
Yes, Melvyn.
Well, Salonixon is a nickname for a mineral salt, which is more correctly known in Latin as sal enixum. This salt, which is crystallized sulfate of soda, is used as a dye stuff, and to cheer themselves up while they're working with it, people gave it this nickname, and they say, "My turn for Salonixon, bash the Salonixon." How about a bit of Salonixon?
So it's an old-fashioned tea-urn, it's a mineral salt, and it's a smoked freshwater mussel. Meg?
The choice between a tea-urn, a freshwater mussel, and a mineral salt. Oh, goodness.
Quite so.
Promising start.
It is.
Let them read on face.
Yes, it's a little face reading going on here. But I think I must perhaps discard the tea-urn. I think I'll also discard the freshwater mussel, and the Latin scholar over there, Mr. Melvyn Bragg, I'll chance it and think
chance it.
She chances your definition.
She chances it with Melvyn Bragg. True or bruff?
It's a bruff, isn't it? It's true!
Sally Nixon is indeed what Melvyn said it was. It's a sort of mineral salt. And now we have the word, well, you have, pronounce it as you will. Hunchak, I don't know. Meg Wynn Owen.
It's pronounced hunchak because it's a sleeping bag. It's the regular kind of sleeping bag for Eskimos in the Lapland section of the Arctic, and other bits use sleeping bags with different names. If you're very smart, I mean, it's a simple reindeer envelope, and if you're terribly smart, I suppose you could line it with polar bear or Arctic fox. On the other hand, you could never line it, however smart you are, with an electric blanket. That's what it is, a sleeping bag.
Right. Patrick.
I can now reveal, after the course of nearly 100 years, what the Hunchok were. An Armenian underground movement launched 1890, died around about 1894, aimed at throwing off the Turkish oppressors. The Hunchok.
Bit of sense at last.
Yes. Richard.
Hunchak actually comes from Poland, and it is a kind of wooden bugle, but it is not used for ordinary bugling purposes. It's a sort of factory hooter. When the mujik, oh, that's the wrong country, whatever it is, when the peasants are out in the forests chopping down trees and so forth. Thank you. And it's time for them to go off to Dindin. Instead of having to dash 3 miles down the forest, the overseer raises his hunchak and blows a crude blast on it, and they all dash off.
It's a wooden bugle as opposed to wooden halfpence. It's an Armenian secret society, and it's an Eskimo sleeping bag. Francis, the choice is yours.
Well, you see, they've been trying to help me, and they each think a different thing to me. And I don't know what it is. I wonder if... How would you know that a Eskimo says hunchak, Meg?
Don't answer.
You met one in Oxford Street yesterday.
Don't answer.
All right, I cannot answer that.
All right.
Thank you.
The Fifth Amendment.
I thought you meant it was an Armenian underground, a sort of train, until you started that bit about the Poles.
Francis.
A factory worker. Mind you, you see, he did say that about some funny people and said, no, they weren't there, and he couldn't have said that if that wasn't the true one. If you know what I mean.
Well,
I'm in such a muddle, darling, that I'm
so
going...
are we. Imagine our position.
Yes, well, I'm going to go for Richard because it sounds so improbable. I'm going for Richard.
That was the wooden
factory
bugle
worker wooden bugle bit.
on which he blew. True or bluff?
It's you!
No, it wasn't that. Who gave the true definition of this word?
These noble Armenians striving away from 1890 onwards, actually. 1893.
It's an Armenian secret society. We shall have another word, and it's Concha, and it's Frank's turn.
Concha is thieves' cant for Lago, which is modern cant for the ear. And Concha, a Concha Cull was a member of your little organisation that listened to other people talking. And divvy the conch meant, oh, listen.
Melvyn.
I finished.
Oh, great. But Melvyn, you can start. He's finished.
Well, Concha is a worker, semi-skilled worker, who spends his time ladling chocolate into a chocolate mixing machine. And this sort of person is called a concha.
Yes. Francis, your go.
A concha is a sort of American milkmaid's yoke, not on a dress, things they wear around their neck. And you have, well, I suppose if you're a milkmaid, you have milk buckets in it. But this is different because it's for sowing seeds. So it has sort of panniers either side. And you wear it round your neck, and you have your panniers full of seed, so that when you go along, you can use both hands to sow the seeds. That's a concha.
Always sounds so reasonable. It's thieves' cant for the human ear. It's the kind of yoke from which you distribute seed, and it's a chap who puts the chocolate wherever the chocolate ought to be. And Patrick, your choice?
This American girl with the yoke
No yoke.
and seeds in each bucket, what happens in the middle? If you're throwing them outwards, you've got to go all over the whole thing all over again. Don't attempt to explain. Because it isn't that. On the other hand, nobody working in a chocolate factory is called a conch. It's got to be the conch, the shell, the ear.
The ear. Frank, you said it, didn't you? True or bluff?
Oh, no, it ain't, mate.
Oh,
Now we need to know, fairly swiftly, who gave us the true definition. And there it comes. Yes. Someone has to ladle it, you see, after all. But anyway, that brings us to the end of the game. I see the score stands at 4-3. That means that Patrick and his team have won. Melvyn nearly broke the rules there by trying to clap them. That's not allowed. More gold bricks from the Oxford English Dictionary next week. Until then, goodbye from Melvyn Bragg.
No.
Richard last. Francis Bennett. Wynn Owen. Frank Muir. Patrick Campbell.
Good night.
And goodbye. Call My Bluff, featuring that promising newcomer, Patrick Campbell.
Thanks. And my first guest might have died in upstairs and downstairs, but she here is in full life, Wynn Owen. And the other lad is a television critic who appeared in this show last week. I now come back for more. We hope with some nice words to say about some little show. Richard Last, the Elder.
And Vincent Price's stand-in, Frank Muir.
I return with a team which I can say in all due modesty were runners-up last week. the lovely actress Frances Bennett. And lovely novelist and presenter of arts programmes, Melvyn Bragg.
Touch and go there for a minute. Now, let's have the first word, shall we? Luke's is the first word, and you may remember Patrick Campbell's team is going to define Luke's 3 different ways. 2 of the definitions are no good, 1's true. That's the one that Frank Muir and his company are going to try and pick out. So it's you to kick off, Patrick, with this word.
Go.
In my own time. I'm not ready yet. But Luke's, of course, is an old epithet, or as you should describe goods made in Liège. A town east of Brussels, you might know if you know anything at all, lad, by this time.
Which way does the accent go?
There's no accent in Liège.
Isn't there?
I would have said Liège. Anyway.
Come on, we wanted 8-0. Come on.
You could have Luke's velvet, you could have Luke's lace of the 16th century, and that's all. Without interruptions next time, if you would.
Right. It's Richard Last's turn.
You may recall a little song from somewhere back about caviar coming from a virgin sturgeon, and in consequence being a rare dish. The song might have gone on, but didn't. Might have gone on to say that sturgeons also yield this substance, lux, which has the distinction of being the first thing used to counteract B.O. Oh, yes.
Yes.
I haven't finished. When rubbed on the body, now, if taken through the nose, it is a powerful aphrodisiac, and is therefore even more valuable than caviar.
Just wouldn't know where to put it then, would you? Meg, it's your turn.
It's very good indeed.
Luke's, in fact, was one of the central fittings of a laundry after the Industrial Revolution. It's an ironing machine consisting of a polished metal bed over which a polished metal roller passes to and, well, I suppose, fro as well. But it's basically an Victorian ironing machine, and the manufacturer of it was the engineering firm Luke's and Company in Halifax, hence its name, Luke's.
Well, there you are. It's an ironing machine, an early ironing machine. It's an early form of deodorant, and it's anything goods manufactured at Liège. Frank, your choice.
Not the Victorian ironing machine. I don't think Luke's. If it was a tiny one, it could have been Bassett Luke's, couldn't it? But not a big. God, sturgeon.
Smell.
You can't shove aphrodisiac up your nose, can you? Speaking as a snuff taker, you can't shove caviar up your nose. It'd be terribly expensive. Liège lace. I think it's Liège lace.
You do, eh? Well, that was Patrick. True or bluff?
He's a bit eager, isn't he?
You've at long last got one right, old lad. Down the hole.
Absolute bullseye. Luke's is what was made in Liège. And here we have, well, what do we have? Egacropyle. I don't know how you pronounce it. Frank will have to do it.
I don't know either. This is the trouble. I didn't take Greek at school. I took extra posture. But it's either egagopably or No, you're a chap in Greece, in ancient Greece, and you want to stand up and make a speech. You see, you want to anything to curse the administration, or say Socrates, you know, that drink will be the death of him, or something like that. Diogenes is a barrel of fun. You could not in those days just stand up anywhere in the town square or something. What you did was you found an officially approved spot on which to orate, which was a lump of stone called a...
Whatever it is.
Egropoli.
Well done, old lad.
Yes,
Not bad in
yes.
a shot.
All things considered.
Yes.
Semi-literate.
Who goes on now? it's Melvyn's go. Melvyn Bragg.
Well, an agagropile is a man or woman who suffers from a rather rare but well-defined special kind of persecution complex. And in this case, the man or woman believes that they are beset, generally at night, generally in dreams, by birds of prey, eagles, vultures, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
The word, like many of these words in psychoanalysis, comes from Greek, and it came originally from a Greek man who spent 14 years, it's been calculated, in this condition, and he was the first agraglo.
Try again, lad.
He was the first of those.
You did it so nicely the first time. Francis.
An agagropile is a hairball. Well, you're looking a bit surprised, Meg. A hairball is a mass of swallowed hairs that you occasionally find in a llama's tummy. A four-legged llama, not a two-legged llama, because two-legged llamas are men, you know, in Tibet, and four-legged llamas are animals, and they're the ones that swallow the hairs that you occasionally find in their tummies. That's an agagropile.
So it means this. It means that it's a stone. It was a stone in ancient Greece that you got up on and did some orating from. It's someone who thinks a bird's running after him, and it's a hairball. Patrick.
Right, it's pitiful, isn't it, really? Do you think in 1975 a little touch of culture might intrude itself? Poor Mr. Melvyn Berg, talking about
Culture.
this Greek man who thought he was being...
What thought he was?
They're called Greeks. Not this Greek man who thought he's been chased by a bird. Don't look at that, a place makes speeches. It's a well-known fact that Greeks make speeches everywhere. There's one Greek together with another Greek makes speeches. That thing there. It is a place. What's she saying?
Pile of stones.
Yes, little pile. It's a hairball, isn't it?
That's the one you're choosing. Francis, you spoke of that.
Not for a fact, don't
Own
you?
up, lass.
Show it.
How'd you do it?
Agagropile actually does mean what she said it was, namely a hairball in the stomach of an animal. Earlings is the next one. Richard, your go.
This is one of these many splendid words without which this programme could hardly exist that come from the English countryside, and in this case it refers to a ploughing match, or a series of ploughing matches. One of those capers where a sturdy yeoman with a horse and a plough, where they have to go up and down a field, seeing who can plough the straightest furrow. And its most common use is in connection with a do called the Huntingdon Earlings, which is held annually at St Neots, and which in fact is now listed as an official tourist attraction.
Is it?
Yeah. Flock along. Meg.
No, Earlings are the ancestors of hat pins. Well, I mean, they're thin, thin wires, and a woman secured her heavy hat onto her head with them. The millinery of, say, the Plantagenet ladies, for instance, would have fallen off if they hadn't been secured by a whole network of Earlings. You see, they were anchored at each side, and a loop went round the ear.
Yes. Patrick.
Earlings, of course, are named for a hunting boot, which is brown on top and black underneath. Alexander Earling, working his trade in Melton Mowbray, 1774, thought, why have black boots all the time or brown boots? I'd do a little bit of business if I made the top brown and the bottom black. And he made a fortune.
OK, well, it's a ploughing match. It's an early form of the hat pin, and it's party-coloured boots. Melvyn.
Well, the ploughing match sounds very possible, but it's delivered so strongly that I suspect it. And I don't think I remember that particular ploughing match. Captain Campbell was extremely enthusiastic, and it's always dangerous after to follow that sort of enthusiasm. I think it's a kind of sword-pointed earring or whatever, dangerous.
The hat pins, you think?
Pins,
yeah.
yes.
She said the loop round your ear
That's
and all
what I
that. Meg, Wynn Owen.
Be.
True or bluff? You've got it. Earlings were early things that went round your ears. Keep your hat on. Burnsides.
Make a game of it, Paddy.
Yes, you have to back up. Burnsides is the next word. Melvyn Bragg to define it.
Well, burnsides is, as the word simply says, it's the sides of a burn, which, as you know, in Scotland is the name for a stream. But the word isn't used generally for the sides of a burn. The word is actually a Scottish legal term connected... You're nodding already.
I'm listening as
sorry,
best I can.
I'm very pleased you're nodding. It's a Scottish legal term connected with fishing rights, and a Scottish lawyer would define it as riparian barratry per mediam fluvium, but round the rivers in the lowlands they call them burnsides.
Yeah. Francis, speak.
Me?
Yeah.
Well, you know you had Wellington, and you had Wellington boots, and you had Raglan and Raglan coats, and you had the Earl of Sandwich, who had something to do with sandwiches. Well, there was an American general, Victorian American general, called General Burnsides. And this was named after him, but it wasn't Burnsides. Well, at least it was Burnsides, but now we call them sideburns. And those bits of hair that come down there. But when he had them, he started them. He was most famous for them, so they were called Burnsides. And for some reason, now we call them sideburns. Burnsides.
Oh, no, we don't.
Well, you haven't got any.
Next.
It's the last bit to go, Patrick. I think it's Frank, your go next.
I'll do this at dictation speed, in case you want to make notes. Astronomical phenomena. They are,
Wait.
Burnside spots, astronomical phenomena, kind of luminous blobs to be seen around about and after comets. Can't tell you much more about them because nothing more is known, and even less was known by Mr. Burnside, who first spotted them.
That has given you pause. It's luminous astronomical dots, banks of a stream in Scotland carrying rights with them, and sideburns. Richard.
Well, it is, of course, so nice to have somebody from an intellectual programme on to tell us about all this Latin, riparian and the rest. But I don't believe it, because if it was really that, they wouldn't call it anything so simple as Burnsides, knowing spots. I think this bit about the astronomical phenomena is deliberately calculated to deceive because of a thing with Heaviside there. You think?
Yes, that's what I'm thinking about myself.
You think? Yes. So, especially because it looks like a double bluff, I'm going for the sideburns.
Sideburns. Now, Francis, you did speak about those as being what they might turn out to be. True or bluff? You're right. Sideburns were invented by a fellow called Burnsides. Sort of logic there. Now, it's 2-2, and we have the word mananose. Well, how do you say it, Meg?
It's actually pronounced, as I think, mananose.
Yes.
Because it's West African, and the cadence is kind of good if you say mananose. It sounds right. Anyway, it is actually a rudely fashioned wicker chair. And people are hoisted inboard or outboard of ships on the West African coast with these, manana sail. And Kipling reported on his arrival to West Africa at Takoradi, and he wrote, "A manana sail was lowered, and I made the usual undignified descent to the waiting surf boat."
Patrick.
And the manatee, it's a kind of Burmese tree, rather similar to teak, the same fine-grained wood, lasts forever. But the trouble with this tree is it contains a natural chemical that burns people's skin. If you touch the... you can't make furniture out of manatee.
Wear gloves.
Wait.
Trousers.
Even sitting in corduroy trousers, you know you've been sitting on a manatee.
Richard last, you're going.
A mananasay, I still can't say it, is a kind of clam found in the Atlantic Ocean, or rather at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, off the eastern seaboard of America. It lives under just a few inches under the sand, and it's distinguished from other clams by having a little sort of snout, which every so often it pokes up through the sand and waves about like a periscope as if it were looking, which would be a total waste of time because A, it can't see with it, and B, it could only see sea and sand if it could. It also, through this little periscope, sends up little jets of water, which is even more futile considering it's totally surrounded by water. But the most important thing about it is it's delicious.
Well, there you are. It's a very, very silly clam. It's a West African bosun's chair, and it's a Burmese tree which they can't make furniture out of, or they've stopped making it out of. Francis, choose away.
Hit on funny.
You see, darling, I don't see that they talk about this tree very much. They couldn't make anything of it, they couldn't touch it, they couldn't sit on it, and you say if you sat on a chair you'd know all about it. Well, you just told us nobody could make the chair in the first place because it would burn their hands.
That floored him.
I think, you see, that... I don't know. You see, I know those camels hump things, but I don't know if Kipling did go to Takoradi. I suppose he must have. But I don't think he would have if he was going to be lowered in a boat. But I didn't know anything but whales shot up water. But I believe you, Richard. I think clams probably do. Don't you believe him? I do.
I do,
Yes,
yes.
I'll pick Richard's clam.
Well, you're all three going to find out whether you're right or wrong, aren't you? Because, own up, Richard. You're right. You ought to get double marks for that. It never happened before. All three in agreement like that. But it does. A mananasay, or however you pronounce it, is indeed a little clam that does all that for no reason that anyone knows. Shemal is the next one, and Francis, your go.
A shamal is a minor church dignitary of the Mohammedan sect, but a very small sect of the Mohammedan sect, which is in the Philippines. And the main duty of a shamal is to act as a sort of custodian of the padoti, who are the priests, to make sure they don't get up to anything. He sometimes locks them up at night.
Yes. Frank, I think it's your go.
A shemal is the action which concludes the bargain between two bargainers of the Jewish faith. It's a sort of... It's very difficult to do when there's only one of you, but it's a kind of that sort of action. And they used to say, I pledge my word, but that's now unnecessary. And it is, in fact, an irrevocable... Can I go back and start again? An irrevocable...
Thank you.
Bargain.
A moment.
I-double-R-E-double-V. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Come on.
Melvyn.
The shamal is a balmy, very gentle wind that blows across Bahrain into the Persian Gulf. It always blows in a northwesterly direction. It gently billows the burn houses of Arabs, and at the same time nowadays it's specially sent by Allah, we believe, to cool the money mountains of the oil sheiks.
It's a Jewish handshake, it's a balmy wind, and it's a Mohammedan rather small Mohammedan dignitary. Meg?
I'm slightly bemused.
Playing it cool.
I think the bargaining clap, dropped a pencil, is a little overstated.
Well, I tend to, unfortunately.
On the other hand, don't worry, I haven't decided, so you can...
Sit back, lad.
It's all right. The balmy wind has a certain kind of truth about it.
Magic?
Well, not magic, but truth. I think Frances, she looks so innocent. It's frightening.
You're going to...
I'll choose Frances.
Choose her. She said it was Mohammedan...
A dignitary.
Dignitary, didn't you? Yeah, two on
I
Bluff.
think it's Frances.
No. No, nothing to do with that. Someone's got to tell. The person who gave the true definition's got to tell now.
Not the balmy.
The balmy wind.
Yes, indeed. It's that very soft wind that blows over the greenhouses of the east or the orchards of the west or whatever. And now we have another word, and that word is deutery, and Patrick Campbell to kick off.
You've heard it. If an old Scotsman is passing to his rest, they put all around his basket, his bed, his deuteries. Which are his small personal possessions, like a half-eaten haggis, a bottle and a half of whiskey, his wife, his sporran, half a kilt, and a borrowed pen. It's the remnants of a Scotsman's life placed around his beard just before he passes away.
Now we'll have to move extraordinarily fast. Richard, just 2 or 3 words for you.
Deutery is an extremely potent Indian drink, so potent that if you drink just a spot of it, you're out for the count. It could be the answer to all our problems.
Yeah, right. Meg?
No, deutery is the art of metal inlay or chasing metal with a net. You pick away with an etching tool.
I think you're going to... That's good enough. The craft of chasing metal, it's kind of cider or thereabouts, and it's a Scots deathbed custom. Frank, choose quickly, please.
Heard of chasing rainbows, but not chasing metal. Can't be that. Indians don't drink. Must be Paddy's Scotsman's possessions.
Was it?
Shall I show McCann?
Patrick, true or bluff?
You got the wrong sporran there.
Oh, no. Let's have the true definition.
There it is.
There it is. There you are. Frank Muir's team has won.
Yeah.
I dare say, I'm sure, that we should have more 3-bob notes we dig out of the Oxford English Dictionary next time. Until when, goodbye from Richard last, Melvyn Bragg, Wynn Owen, Francis Bennett, Patrick Campbell, Frank Muir, and goodbye. You're right, sir. This is Call My Bluff, featuring the mock auctioneer himself, Frank Muir.
Groucho Marx, I think, once introduced a guest saying, my next guest is someone who requires every bit of introduction they can get. Well, just the opposite is true of my guest, who needs absolutely no introduction except to say, Joan Bakewell. My chap guest is rather nice because for the first time since this programme, which has been running, as you know, since 1892, we have a broadcaster from a particular field. We have a DJ. And from Top of the Poppies and from the breakfast show on Radio 1 from 7 o'clock until 9 o'clock in the morning, and looking very well, all things considered, Noel Edmonds.
And in Trap 2, Patrick Campbell.
And my first guest is an almost unbearably beautiful girl. She's now playing at the Old Vic, or should be by this time, in Two Gentlemen of Verona, but she's playing neither of the gentlemen, she's playing the part of Julia. She's Judy Geeson. And my other guest ought to be on his way to collect the ashes or to deliver them back again wherever he's going to. He's going to Australia. He's a kind of singing actor who sings and acts but at different times. Mr. Edward Woodward.
But this is what it's really all about. There, we ring a bell and we get, well, 2 words, but it's really 1 word because there's a hyphen in between. Frank Muir and his team will define hinch-pinch 3 different ways. 2 of the definitions are no good. 1 of them's all right. That's the one that Patrick and co are going to try and pick out. So, what of hinch-pinch, Frank?
Hinch-pinch. Hinch-pinch. Old, rustic game. Going back to, no, even earlier. It's a game which should be revived, I think. It's played by 2 contestants, and contestant A pinches and slaps contestant B, and contestant B then pinches and slaps contestant A harder. And so it goes on, and the survivor is declared the winner. Hinch, pinch.
Sounds like a more interesting version of Call My Bluff. Noel Edmonds.
Hinch, pinch, or hotchpotch. But there is a subtle difference. Whereas a hotchpotch cannot really be sorted out. It's a little bit like trying to sort out spaghetti bolognese or scrambled eggs or something like that. A hinch, pinch can be sorted out, eventually. Whether it's a rugby scrum or old clothes at a jumble sale, it can be untangled eventually. A hinch, pinch.
All right, now, Joan Bakewell, your go.
Hinchpinch is a Northumbrian word for a Northumbrian thing.
Wait,
it's a form of latch only found in that region. Now, most latches go, up and down to lift the latch. The hinchpinch, pressure sideways. Hinchpinch.
Well, there you are. It's a latch, at last, from Northumberland rather than Norfolk. It's rustic foolery, a sort of rustic game, and it's a mixture or jumble. Patrick.
I got an awful feeling we've had this word before. Is this the one we had before, Frank?
No, I can't remember what we had last week.
You can't have people hinching and pinching hour after hour, each one harder than the other. What
Right then.
What
That's
kind
your
of
attitude.
game? What fun is there in that?
What, you know? I'll hinch-pinch you with pleasure.
Do you mind?
What fun is there in that?
I'm doing the definition. Do you mind?
I know, but I'm doing the funnies.
Oh, dear.
We have a thing that you can disentangle. Now, I call it a hinge pinch. Why not I call it a tangle of old wool, a tangle of old bedclothes, a tangle of old ladies? But not to call it a hinge pinch. I believe we had this word before, and I think it's a kind of... But not just yet. Wait, don't rush it. I think it's a thing you can disentangle.
That's to say, something that was tangled up to begin with, or a jumble. That was Noel Edmonds' play.
I don't know how he does it.
Sure, Bluff is in.
It's come to me so soon.
Oh, they're very self-satisfied.
Am I really allowed to thoroughly enjoy this?
No. Who gave the true definition of this word, hinch-pinch?
Getting the first one, which is such fun, isn't it?
Yes.
Gloat, gloat.
Pinch.
There you are. It was so daft it had to be true. Hinch Pinch is a ridiculous game which, for obvious reasons, has died out. Now, you have Laspic, and Patrick is going to tell us about Laspic.
As you probably guessed, Laspic is a kind of ignorant English version of the lovely French word Laspic, spelled L''A''S''P''I''C. You Laspic. It's a kind of meat jelly, a little bit of streaky bacon, a little bit of lettuce, and I got a little thing in aspic, or as they call it here, ignorantly enough, called Laspic.
Yep. Now it's Edward Woodward to tell us more of this word.
It's very simple, and it's very ordinary in one way. It is, in fact, a bamboo stick, which, in fact, is tipped at the end with a piece of iron. It is generally used by foremen or overseers in Malaya, and apart from being a staff of office, is also quite a good weapon, and quite often is used as a snake stick. There is one quite unremarkable thing about it, that it is a piece of bamboo. There is also a remarkable thing about it, that it has to come from the male bamboo shoot. And well, you've heard of male and female hops.
No.
You should have heard of male and female hops.
I don't pry.
Yes, well, you should. And there are also male and female of every kind of plant, and etc. And this has to come from the male bamboo.
Is it?
Laspic.
Okay.
I think we should draw a veil over the rest of it. Judy, Geeson, your turn.
Well, a laspic is a fit of Arabian ague. It's a fit of the shakes, which Arabs apparently are prone to, and apparently frequently prone to the ground. According to a 17th century medical dictionary, a doctor should, in the treatment of laspic, and I quote, have a care of great purges.
Yep. Well, as you've heard, it's a savoury jelly, it's an Arabian ague, and it's a Malayan stick of office. Frank Muir.
Perhaps an excess of eating savoury wobble pudding, you could then give the patient a purge by prodding him with a bamboo stick.
And after that, then...
Could do that.
Yeah. After that, resign from
Wouldn't
the
get you anywhere, but you
BBC.
could do it.
Right, now, down to work. Come on, don't mess
Good,
about, Muir.
at last.
Bamboo stick pick, I suppose we're trying to be led along to believe it is, do you think? Arabian ague sounds very unlikely. Savoury wobble pudding lettuce. No, Arabian ague.
The Arabian
Let's have a
ague.
go.
Now, Judy Geeson, you said that, didn't you, my dear? Well, now, tell us true or bluff.
Oh, dear.
Oh, no. She made it all up. Who gave the true definition?
You wouldn't believe in male and female plants at all, would you?
I said, now speak, don't touch your little lot there.
You worried me for a minute there, Edward. But, yeah, it's a savoury jelly. That's what it is. All that Patrick said is true. 1-1. Sherma is the next word, and Noel Edmonds is to define it.
The following revelation could well prove distasteful to animal lovers. I'm sorry about this, but a Sherma is a dose which is given by a horse coper to a horse to give possibly a future purchaser the idea that the animal is sound-winded. Just to elaborate a little so you can understand what sort of Sherma might be given, various substances which have been used in the past include ground peppermint, linseed oil. I'm not quite sure how they do this, but I'm just giving you the materials. Opium, and at the risk of an obscene pun involving sound-winded, gunpowder.
Joan?
Sherma is a noun of assemblage, or in language that you would understand, a group noun. One of those lovely evocative words like pride of lions and school of dolphins, wisp of snipe, exultation of larks. Sherma, would you believe, of pilchards.
Not for a second.
I thought tin was the noun of assembly for that. Frank, your go.
Oh, Shermer is, printing used to be called the mystery, the craft of printing, because it's a very mysterious thing, and they keep their secrets to themselves. But I can reveal one tonight. Do you know, have you ever thought how a printer gets the ink from the tin or the pot onto the roller? I mean, he could sort of shake the pot over, or he could dip his hand in and fling it on.
This could take
But
hours.
a printer used a little spatula piece of wood, which he used to spread the ink around, called a Shermer. You learn something new every day.
Yes, you do. Well, it's an ink mixer. It's a noun of assembly for pilchards, and it's sort of dope you give horses. You want to make them look rather better than they are. Edward?
I find it very extraordinary. Yes, Patrick? No.
Carry on.
I don't find Patrick extraordinary, but he did speak to me at that moment, and I wondered if they had something of pith and moment.
No,
to say. Nothing of pith or moment.
However, comma.
I can't... So he sherms this ink, this printer. He sherms the... Yes. It seems to be quite a likely story. Horse doper fix and an assemblage noun. I don't know. Shall I make a guess?
Well, it's all you've got to go on, isn't it?
It is really, yes. Yes. I will plonk for...
Let's do.
Plonk for an assemblage noun. It sounds fairly rightish.
Well, that was Joan, wasn't it? Yes. You've been plonked for, lass. True or bluff? Right! Lifetime spent sitting here, listening to people plumb. It's so nice to find someone who plonks. You were going to say...
And he looks more worried when he wins.
I couldn't believe
Yes,
the
exactly.
genius of that guy.
Shall we have another little do? Fuster is our next word, and I think, Edward Woodward, it's you to define it.
A fuster. It is often preceded by an alliterative adjective, such as a furious fuster, a fast fuster. A regiment of line soldiers named for a grenadier guardsman. And one explanation, and it is in fact only one explanation of this word, fuster, is that it is a corruption of firster, because the grenadier guards were in fact originally known as the First Foot Guards, and therefore called firsters, the corruption being fuster.
Yep, who knows? And now, Judy, it's your turn.
Well, a fuster is a maker of saddle trees, which I expect you know, they form the frameworks that are the basis of a horse's saddle. And the craft of the fuster calls for a very artful compromise between fitting the convex curve of the horse's back and the concave curve of the horseman's hindquarters.
Yes. Now it's Patrick's turn.
Well, fuster is a natural history word. It means animals digging either with claw or snout.
Thank God for that.
And me too. On with the game then. You see, domestic animals like dogs foster in the ground to bury a bone, or domestic cats foster in the ground, yes. But the fanciest fusterer of them all is the fusterer that comes from Périgord in France, which is the pig that fusters for truffles.
Right. It's a grenadier. It's a maker of saddle trees, and it's an animal which snuffles things up, digs things up. Noel, your turn.
I would dearly love to believe Edward, actually.
Well,
something
feel free.
regimental, something military. Fuster's Last Stand. It appeals, but I can't see it at all. It's not a military term of any real strong belief. I know nothing about horses. I enjoy riding, but I don't know anything about horses. I've certainly... sort of horse words are thrown around, but I've never heard this one. I'm sorry, it's... despite the little bit of French thrown at the end as a very good disguise, it's got to be the
the animal digging faster and faster and faster and faster.
Well, now, wasn't it Patrick who said that?
Yes,
if
that's
memory
Patrick.
serves. Yes, true or bluff?
Hopelessly wide of the mark.
He only said that in order to deceive. Who gave the true definition? It's got to be there somewhere.
Little Miss Geeson, surely?
Yes, indeed. Seldom have makers of saddle trees been so heartily applauded, but that's what the word means. And now we have a word called scodgy, or calls itself scodgy. Joan, what of this word?
Oh, yes, scodgy. It was a 22-foot Bermuda-rigged yacht. It was popular in the 1920s. It was made mostly at Mr. Foster's boatyard in Chichester Harbour. And what I'm sure will interest you most is how the name came about. The name is the designation by initial that it was given by its designer. South Coast One Design General Yacht. Isn't that clever?
It fits, doesn't it?
Entirely
Yeah.
untrue, but
It all depends whether it's true or not. Yeah, Frank.
Another one, true one.
Good.
Scots word. In a Scots household, they'd have a small boy, or large, really, could be. Size doesn't matter, but youngish, not young, but youngish, boy or girl, who did all the dirty work. So if they wanted something like the old porridge scraped out of the kitchen drawer, to rinse through a second-hand pair of bagpipes, delouse a sporran, they'd say, "Skia tola scourgy."
Never in 100 years.
Glasgow.
Now, Noel Edmonds, your turn.
Scodgy is a word heard mainly in Dorset, and to cut a very long story short, it means tight-fisted, rather mean. And you might well have a stranger to certain parts of Dorset come into a pub and say, what a splendid place, drinks are on me. And just as all the locals are going, you go, seem to have come without my, and they'll all go, he's a girt, scodgy bugger.
What then?
So it means mean in Dorset. It's a yacht, and it's a Scotch dog's body. Judy, you can choose.
Well, it's very difficult.
Your
see,
teammates aren't listening.
No, not impossible. I mean, the boat, it sounds, really very logical. And, I mean...
Very beautiful.
Oh, I'm sure they were. And I would willingly believe it. Frank, I don't know about Frank.
Nobody does.
Frank always comes up with these ones that you think just can't be true, and then they are. I know. And then, no. Don't know. I think maybe... No, don't shake your head. No, because I don't believe him. No. You see, he's trying to tell me that he's right and make me think he's right, and he's not. It's Frank.
You'll turn yourself inside out.
Oh, I have already. I'm
You said
exhausted.
that it was some kind of scullion or other. True or bluff? 1, 2, 3. Doing rather well. 4-1. Scodgy certainly means someone who does all the dirty work in some kind of Scots household. Napan or Knapan, I don't know. Judy Geeson, your turn.
A napan was a ball game. It was played by the Welsh before they took up rugby football. And it was a kind of a handball game that was played by two opposing teams, and each member would take a massively heavy wooden ball and throw it as far as he could in a forward direction. That's the game.
Yeah. Patrick, now what do you say?
Because the napan was one of the odder features of fashion in the 14th century. 13 onwards, about 14, yes. It's a kind of string or chain that used to join, for no conceivable reason, at the toe of your boot to your knee. rendering such activities as dancing or footy, where you can finish up with 4 broken legs, almost impossible. Thank you.
Stop your knee coming off, I suppose, something like that. Edward.
Napan. I shall demonstrate Napan to you. The clicking of the fingers, the forefinger and the thumb clicking together. It is, in fact, an original Scottish word. And I used to work in Scotland when I was in early days in rep, and it is an old variety word. And you used to have napan work. And the napan work was this. I shall now demonstrate napan work. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, there you are, Frank. Don't do that snuff and blowing the handkerchief again, will you, ever? Ever. No singing, Patrick, no... Very good, excellent.
I'm not sure this program's got a music license.
Bonus points for that. But I'll tell you what they all said. They said that it was Welsh handball, it was all that he did with his hands, meaning snapping your fingers, and it's a 14th century shoelace to stop your kneecap falling off or something like that. Now, Joan.
He acts, he sings, and he nappers. Too much, absolutely. Not to be tolerated, definitely not that. The Welsh, before rugby, they threw the ball forwards. No, I think they've all been always been inclined backwards, the Welsh, really. I say that as an expatriate. I'm fascinated by this chain of the knee to the toe. Mm-hmm. It's so grotesquely ludicrous, Patrick, that I think it can only be true coming from you.
Does that mean that you choose
Yes.
you choose the 14th century shoelace? He did say it. True or bluff, Patrick?
It's just plain grotesquely ludicrous, that's all.
They weren't that daft even in the 14th century. But who gave the true definition of this word? One of you must have done.
There we have
Well done indeed. It's the Welsh handball. You said before they played handball, they threw the ball forward. I think they kicked the ball forward, didn't they?
No,
Didn't you say they threw it?
Yeah.
Yes, they threw it forward as far as possible.
I see, yes. Well, I got that wrong. But I only got it wrong to wear the time away, actually, to tell you the truth. Because that brings us more or less to the end of our interesting little game. The score standing at 5-1. Patrick's team has won.
Well done.
So we'll see if we can't find some more pinchbeck in the Oxford English Dictionary next time. Until then, goodbye from Noel Edmonds, Edward Woodward, Joan Bakewell, Judy Geeson, Frank Muir, Patrick Campbell. Good night. And goodbye. Cheer up, Frank. Cheer up. Hello, this is Call My Bluff, where the red man who speak with forked tongue is Patrick Campbell.
Once again coming to my assistance after last week's tremendous victory at the most beautiful actress the world has ever seen, called Judy Geeson. And the other side, the world's handsomest actor, Mr. Edward Woodward.
And hired at no expense at all, Frank Muir.
Good evening. I have merely my modest but gallant little team last week, starting with broadcaster, writer Joan Bakewell. And with Joan, DJ and motor racing driver Noel Edmonds.
This bell rings, and when it rings, we get a word, and that word is Zobo on this occasion. Patrick Campbell's team defines Zobo 3 different ways. 2 are false, 1 is true, and that's the one that Frank Muir and his company are trying to pick out. So, Patrick, tell us about Zobo.
I can't quite manage an English accent, but the Royal Flying Corps used to call it a Zobo. World War I, and Fritz, or the Bosch, or the Hun, or Jerry, of course now our allies, but in the First World War, up in a balloon, in the Zobo, with the size binoculars peering down at the troops, up to the neck in it, in the Somme, in Passchendaele. But they were observing it from a Zobo, or we call it the old RAF slang, RFC slang, called the Zobo.
It's a balloon.
It's a balloon. How often you say it?
Say so.
You could scarcely have said it more clearly. Edward, your turn.
A Zobo is, in fact, a hybrid animal that is used for domestic purposes in the Himalayas, or Himalayas, whichever way you want to pronounce it. It is a cross between a yak bull and a perfectly ordinary cow. That is a Zobo. The female offspring of this union is known as a Zomo.
I wonder if they mind. Judy Geeson, your turn.
Well, a Zobo is a kind of Central African phoenix. It's an apparition or spectre that's conjured up by a medicine man from the ashes of a funeral pyre. Though it doesn't have to be a bird, it can be, and frequently is, in the form of a goat.
Well, there you have it. It's a bird that rises from the ashes in those circumstances. It's a cross betwixt a yak and a cow, and it's an old-fashioned German-type balloon from which they used to look down on this, that, and the other. Frank, choose away.
No problem here at all. Not an idea in the mind. The Paddy's balloon, a Zobo.
Not my balloon, the Bosch balloon.
No, but you were there at the time. I don't know which...
2 years of
which
age.
side you were fighting on, but...
neutral.
Well, I think a neuter definition. We will and turn on to more spirited things. The yak, the bull, a yak bull, and an ordinary cow. How very interesting, most interesting, and an apparition like a phoenix, a bird that lays a fried egg. It's like a rising from the ashes, a goat. That's it. It's the goat.
The thing that rises up and so forth.
Yes.
Judy, you said it, didn't
Must
you?
be, mustn't it?
I have to tell him, you see, now. Rules of the game. No. Who gave the true definition of this word? Got it there, lad, somewhere. A Zobo is what he said it was, namely a cross between a yak and a cow. And here we have another word, quank, and Frank Muir is going to define quank for us.
Quank Muir. Quank Muir.
I wish I'd thought of that.
Quank is, if you're strolling around Europe, England particularly, and you hear meow, or ow, ow, bark, bark, or moo, you identify the sound those animals make by an onomatopoeic word which reproduces the sound in words, like moo for a cow, moo, you see, or meow, M-I-A-O-W for meow. Now, if you're in America, you see, and you hear the sound of an antelope, or a sort of antelope, a new conk, 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 you say. Conk, conk. You say, ah, I heard a quonk today. The quonk of a new, and that's it. It's an onomatopoeic word for the sound made by a type of American antelope called a GNU.
Lovely.
I have to spell that because it's rather difficult.
Yes.
Otherwise somebody will make a cheap joke about that's the end of the news.
There's no trouble here of any kind.
Someone has, Frank. But let's go on to Noel Edmonds.
A quonk is a very large quant. Do you want any more?
Well, yes.
A
little bit more.
Spare a few words, lad, please.
Ignorant lads.
A quant, nothing to do with cosmetics, fashion or whatever. A quant is a king-size barge pole. Not suggesting that the king would go up the river or that it's just for very large people. It's for large barges. It's 15 to 20 feet in length. It is mainly to be found in the Norfolk Broads.
Yeah.
And like a lot of words, has now been involved in the language so that somebody from Norfolk who doesn't want to get involved in something goes quonk. And that means not I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole, but I wouldn't touch it with a quonk.
Now then, Joan, Bakewell
did well.
A quank is a chairmaker's term. Now, just in case you don't know any chairmakers, they use this word to refer to the angle of splay between the back legs of a chair and the chair seat. Now, you see, if a chair was made with the front legs vertical and the back legs vertical, it would be very unstable, so that the splay of the legs that is, the quank, is very necessary to a comfortable chair. As a matter of fact, just out of interest, the more humble the purpose of the chair, the bigger its quank.
Well, it's the sound made by a GNU. It's a barge pole. It's the angle of the chair legs at the back of the chair. Patrick.
Well, it's a well-known fact that the shape of the new's nose prevents it speaking a single word. It's got this huge lump at the end of it. It might go, but never quite.
I've got a joke. I've got a joke. But you knew that, didn't you?
I warned about jokes. I said it's dangerous.
No, I thought I'd get a joke. It will never go. Sorry, Patrick.
Well, if I can begin again. It's a well-known fact. It can't be a new that's silent anyway, that. And if you've got a splay-leg chair, you say the legs are about 3 foot apart, or you don't call it a quank. So it's got to be this huge barge pole, what's used on the Norfolk Broads to this very day.
That was what Noel Edmonds said, wasn't it? Yes. Wonder if he was teasing.
The risk of proving you to be a bit of a quank.
Nothing to do with that. Didn't believe it. So, who gave the true definition of this interesting word?
Oh, no!
It's the noise made by a new. And now, here's another word. And it's swatchel, or they may pronounce it different ways. Edward, your turn.
Well, rather surprisingly, swatchel is in fact an old nonce word for Mr. Punch, who regularly, of course, plays at the seaside opposite Judy. One explanation for this word is, in fact, that the name derives from the German word, or word, if you prefer it, which is schwatzen, meaning to chatter. But personally, I think this is highly unlikely. But there we are. Swatchel.
That's what you say it is.
Nonce word for Mr. Punch.
OK. Judy Geeson.
Well, a swatchel is a navigable channel in an estuary. It's a waterway between sandbanks and other navigational hazards, and ships can use it to either enter or leave a river. You might be interested to know that You're not?
Very boring.
You don't want to know? Because, I mean, I won't...
Carry on, my love. Do, go on.
Are you sure?
Just try
it's
to
not
put you
bad,
off.
the next bit.
I don't know.
No,
Why?
well, it's just that the River Humber has a 5-mile swatchel, and on the map they've marked it down as Annie Buxton's Passage.
Best bit was the best bit, you were right.
Patrick's turn.
This is the first bit, wasn't it?
And I'm sorry this word's appeared because I can't say it. And there's far worse to come because a swatchel is a medieval fly swatter. But it can also describe either the medieval flies with that thing, or the implement itself, or the man that handles it. Like the swatchel can be either this fly swatter, a bunch of feathers on the end of a twig or a bit of cloth, or the man that actually uses that thing himself.
It's a medieval fly swatter, it's a navigable channel, or it's another word for Mr. Punch. Noel Edmonds.
On your own.
Yes.
The disc is spinning.
The bravery of Patrick to bother to go through all that just for a fly.
Fearless.
And yet I'm afraid I've got to dismiss it. I can't see that at all. The waterway of Judy. I can't see it. There was something the way. There was something in the way in which you went through that beautiful accent.
Yeah.
Unbear your card, Ed.
You mean you're choosing him, are you?
Definitely.
Well, he said it was Mr. Punch. So, is it true or bluff?
Was ist das? Junzen mit Ahrensee.
Another word for Mr. Punch is swatchel, and 2-1, we have another word. Now, you can say this umpteen different ways. Gibbous, jibus, I don't know. Noel Edmonds.
Jibus. A jibus is a collapsible top hat, intentionally manufactured to collapse. The crown is made to fold first into the brim, with the idea that when you go to the opera, you can stick it under your seat. Sit on it if you want. And in fact, this was the brainchild of a Mr. Jibus, hatter, late of Sackville Street, London West 1. Jibus.
Right. Joan, it's your turn.
Gibbous. It was an early ballistic missile that came off the official secrets list about the 1st century AD. Gibbous. Small, lead, used for putting in a sling, Roman soldiers, straight over when an attack. Acorn-shaped lead missile.
Yep. And now it's Frank Muir's turn.
Haven't the faintest idea how to pronounce it, but it's the source of primitive music in Serbia.
Waste your time, son, don't.
It was the source of primitive music made from an instrument which looks rather like an enormous pear cut in half. And it's got...
Now you're talking.
It's got one string, and it's played with a bow and a melancholy expression.
You don't happen to have one by you, fortunately. Anyway, it's a one-string instrument of the description that Frank offered. It's a collapsible top hat, and it's a ball of lead used as a missile. So it's Edward Woodward to choose between those.
Leave us not haver. It is a top hat, collapsible.
You don't care to speak about the others?
No, sir.
It's against your religious
It is
principles?
absolutely against all religious principles.
Certainly.
It's a top hat.
Collapsible. Well, that was, yes, Noel Edmonds. Yeah, you did, didn't you? Yeah, true or bluff, is it?
I'm going to have trouble to top
I've never
that.
seen an arrow winged to the target, and it actually hit it. Now that you know, I mean, this doesn't go so quick as that. Why did you only choose the one? You knew
Patrick told me. He had his hunch, and I always back his hunches.
Yeah, but he's not always reliable. You didn't actually know the word, did you, Patrick?
Yes.
Splendid. Here we have lumery, and I think it's Judy's turn.
Oh, well, lumery is contact with supernatural powers. Lumery is the sort of cultivation of the acquaintance with ghoulies and ghosties and anything like that that would go bump in the night. Lumery actually was named among charges brought against witches and warlocks during the reign of King James I.
Right, now we... Patrick, yes, we come to you.
And lumery, it kind of sounds like what it really is. A kind of sad, looming place, the lumery. It's a small little rocky island which is entirely inhabited by guillemots, little seabirds. And they live there blissfully happily. They get married to other guillemots, have little baby guillemots. They came back to the same lumery year after year and having even more guillemots. It's a kind of lonely bird place.
Is it a proper name, or is it just a name of any kind of lonely bird place?
It's a name of any kind of bird place.
Right, thank you.
Right. It's all he needed to know, just the piece that fitted the jigsaw. Now, Edward, your turn.
I shall show you exactly what a lumery is.
Again.
That's a lumery. It can only be done once a year.
It's a one-man show.
Yes. It is, in fact, a bagpipe serenade. And I wouldn't go to that trouble if it wasn't a bagpipe serenade. It's a bagpipe serenade played regularly, in fact, outside Her Majesty's room at Balmoral. The word derives, in fact, from luma, which is the original bag plus pipe, which is not Scottish, it is, in fact, French. Lumere.
Well, there you are. It was almost as bad as the real thing, wasn't it? It's a bagpipe serenade. It's the raising or being in contact with spirits, and it's the sad, lonely breeding ground of the guillemot. Joan.
I've taken advice from my colleagues.
Oh, no, don't say that.
I'm going to ignore it.
Yes,
I don't think it even sounded terribly like a bagpipe, more like a Japanese suicide. Spirits, witchcraft, well, there are lots of funny words there, so it could be, couldn't be. I just so like the idea of all these guillemots having this happy time on this island. Yes, Patrick, I'll take a risk and see if it's that.
He did say that, didn't he? Yes, they were all wearing those collapsible top hats. But true or bluff?
Your heart's in the right place to guillemot.
It's the place where the guillemots go to it. Now we have another word, and that word is shalouk, and Joan Bakewell to define it.
Shalouk is a cloak or cape made of raffia or dried grass that is like raffia, and it's worn by an Indian squaw on ceremonial occasions. But as, of course, Red Indians kept their squaws in their place, there weren't too many occasions when it was worn, which is, of course, why you aren't so familiar with the word.
Yes.
Next, please.
And now Frank Muir.
It's rather dull, this, actually, but particularly the way I do it. It's, imagine a lumberjack. You know, you've got an axe, and you feel that you're silly just walking around with an axe. You need a sort of general-purpose tool. So you get the camp blacksmith to get a bar of steel and bend the end up and put a spike on the end, sharpen it. And then you've got a thing that you can push bits of wood around, and it's a kind of lumberjack's second best tool to his axe.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? It's all gone dull, hasn't it?
Not if it's a camp lumberjack.
Second best tune.
No, your turn.
I'll try and liven it up a little for you. A shalouk is a member of an African tribe. They live on the banks of the White Nile. No doubt, quite often, are going senile. And their whole...
This is getting worse by the minute.
Their whole bearing, their whole